Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching 2026 PLT Exam Practice. Flashcard 1. The 5 Theoretical Perspectives of Learning. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is behaviorism, social cognitive theory, information processing theory, constructivism, sociocultural theory. Flashcard 2. Behaviorism. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is behaviorists view learning as a process of accessing and changing associations between stimuli and responses. We see behaviorist theory in action in approaches to classroom management and establishing positive contexts for learning. It focuses on what can be observed and measured in learning, people's behaviors, responses, and events in environments that promote behavior stimuli. Conditioning, intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, reinforcement, and punishment are all related to behaviorism. Flashcard 3. Social cognitive theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is social cognitive theorists focus on the ways people learn from observing one another. Albert Bandura is a key theorist from the social cognitive theoretical perspective. Flashcard 4. Information processing theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is this theory focuses more on what happens inside the learner's mind, considers the processes of learning, memory, and performance. Theorists advance the idea of building students' declarative knowledge of what is, procedural knowledge of how to, and conditional knowledge of when again knowledge. Flashcard 5. Constructivism. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is suggests that people construct or create knowledge based on their experiences and interaction, as opposed to absorb knowledge. Some theorists focus on individual constructivism, how one person makes meaning, while others focus on social constructivism, how people gain knowledge by working together. Jean Piaget and Jerome Buhner are key theorists related to constructivism. Flashcard 6. Sociocultural theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is states that the combination of social, cultural, and historical context in which a learner exists have great influence on the person's knowledge construction and the ways teachers must organize instruction. Lev Vygotsky and his theory on the zone of proximal development are key to sociocultural theory. Flashcard 7. Benjamin Bloom. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created Bloom's taxonomy of learning. It has 3 learning domains: cognitive, performance or psychomotor, and affective. They impact the way teachers write lesson objectives, plan learning activities, and assess student performance. Flashcard 8. Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Benjamin Bloom. Cognitive domain involves the mind and skills or strategies one uses and is organized into 6 levels. Performance domain involves manual or physical skills one uses, which are divided into 7 subdivisions. Affective domain, attitude, divided into 5 subdivisions. Flashcard 9. Cognitive domain. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is knowledge, recall, info or data, define, list, locate. Comprehension, understand meaning of instruction and problems, confirm, describe, explain, match. Application, use concepts in a new situation, apply, build, produce, report. Analysis, separate concepts into parts, analyze, categorize. Compare, debate. Synthesis: build a pattern from diverse elements. Compose, design, hypothesize, implement. Evaluation: make judgments, assess, conclude, solve, justify. Flashcard 10. Performance domain. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is perception. Use senses to good motor activity. Choose, describe, identify. Set, ready to act, begin, move, proceed. Guided responses: use trial and error, imitation to learn, copy, follow, replicate. Mechanism: to respond in a habitual way with movements performed with some confidence and proficiency. Assemble, display. Complex overt responses: perform complex movement patterns skillfully. Assemble, quickly. Adaptation: use well-developed skills and be able to modify to fit special requirements. Adapt, alter, revise. Origination: create new movement patterns to fit a specific problem or situation. Arrange, build, compose. Flashcard 11. Affective domain. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is receiving phenomena. To be aware, to have selected attention. Ask, follow, use. Responding to phenomena. To actively participate. Answers, discusses, helps. Valuing: to determine worth. Demonstrate, invite, join. Organizing: to organize values into priorities. Arrange, alter, modify. Internalizing: values control behavior using own value system. Verifies, modifies, acts. Flashcard 12. Social learning theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Albert Bandura. States that children learn by observing others. In a classroom setting, this may occur through modeling or learning through others' experience. Distributed cognition is an important concept from social learning. It is when a person is able to learn more with another or in a group than they might be able to alone. Flashcard 13. Discovery learning and scaffolding. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Jerome Biuna. He thought learning was an active process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based on knowledge or past experiences. Discovery learning techniques use methods that allow a student to discover info by themselves or in a group. Scaffolding involves instructional supports provided to a student in a learning situation. The more capable a student becomes, the less instructional scaffolding they will need. Scaffolding could be a teacher reading the text aloud and then asking the student to repeat. Flashcard 14. John Dewey. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created learning through experience. He is considered the father of progressive education practices that promotes individuality, free activity, and learning through experiences such as project-based learning, cooperative learning, and arts integration activities. Flashcard 15. Learning through experience. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by John Dewey. It says that school is primarily a social institution and a process of living, not an institution to prepare for future living. He believes that schools should teach children to be problem solvers by helping them learn to think as opposed to helping them learn only the content of a lesson. He thinks that students should be active decision makers in their education. For example, allowing students to choose a topic for a project. Flashcard 16. The 8 stages of human development. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Erik Erikson. They are based on a crisis or conflict that a person resolves. Infancy 0-1, trust versus mistrust, key event equals feeing. Toddler 1-2. Autonomy versus doubt. Key event equals toilet training. Early childhood 2-6. Initiative versus guilt. Key event equals independence. Elementary and middle school 6-12. Competence versus inferiority. Key event equals school. Adolescence 12-18. Identity versus role confusion. Key event equals sense of identity. Young adulthood 18-40. Intimacy versus isolation. Key event equals intimate relationships. Middle adulthood 40-65. Generativity versus stagnation. Key event equals supporting the next generation. Late adulthood 65. Death integrity versus despair. Key event equals reflection and acceptance. Flashcard 17. Stages of the ethic of care. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Carol Gilligan. It questions the mal-centered personality psychology of Freud and Erikson, and Kohlberg's mal-centered stages of development. She proposed the stage theory of the moral development of women. Pre-conventional stage goal is individual survival. Transition from selfishness to responsibility to others. Conventional stage goal is self-sacrifice is goodness. Transition from goodness to truth that she is a person, too. Post-conventional stage goal is principle of nonviolence. Flashcard 18. The theory of moral development. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Lawrence Kohlberg. Pre-conventional level, elementary school-aged children are generally at the first stage of moral development. At this level, some authority figure's threat or application of punishment inspires obedience. Conventional level, stage 2 is found in society. Stage 3 is characterized by seeking to do what will gain the approval of peers or others. Stage 4 is characterized by abiding the law and responding to obligations. Post-conventional level, it is rarely achieved by the majority of adults. Stage 5 shows an understanding of social mutuality and genuine interest in the welfare of others. Stage 6 is based on respect for universal principles and the requirements of individual conscience. Flashcard 19. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Abraham Maslow, in which certain lower needs must be satisfied before higher needs can be met. Physiological needs, very basic needs like air, water, food, sleep. Safety needs help us establish stability and consistency in a chaotic world, such as a secure home and family. Love and belonging needs occurs when people need to belong to groups like churches, schools, clubs, families, gangs, people need to be needed at this level. Esteem needs. Self-esteem results from competence or the mastery of a task and the ensuing attention and recognition received from others. Self-actualization. People who have achieved the first 4 levels can maximize their potential. They seek knowledge, peace, oneness with a higher power, self-fulfillment, etc. Flashcard 20. Maria Montessori. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created follow the child. Her philosophy and teaching practices still affect many early childhood programs and charter schools today. She established her school Corso Bambini in 1900. Modified versions of her approach to education are found in some U.S. schools today. Flashcard 21. Follow the child. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Maria Montessori. She believed that childhood is divided into 4 stages, which are divided into 6-year intervals. Birth 6, 6-12, 12-18, and 18-24. This belief led to multi-aged groupings of students based on their period of development. She also believed that adolescence can be divided into two levels, 12-15 and 16-18. She believed that there are three stages of the learning process. Stage 1: introduce a concept by lecture and lesson, experience, book, read aloud, etc. Stage 2: process the info and develop an understanding of the concept through work, experimentation, and creativity. Stage 3: knowing, which she described as possessing an understanding of something that is demonstrated by the ability to pass a test with confidence, teach the concepts to another, or express understanding with ease. Flashcard 22. The stages of cognitive development. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Gene Piaget. Sensorimotor birth 2. Explore the world through senses and motor skills. Pre-operational 2-7. Believe that others view the world as they do. Can use symbols to represent objects. Concrete operational 7-11. Reason logically in familiar situations. Can converse in reverse operations. Formal operational 11 and up. Can reason in hypothetical situations and use abstract thought. Flashcard 23. Operant conditioning. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by B.F. Skinner. He is believed to be the grandfather of behaviorism. Operant conditioning is based on the idea that learning is a function of change in observable behavior. Changes in behavior are the result of a person's response to events, stimuli. When stimuli response is reinforced rewarded, the individual becomes conditioned to respond. A form of psychological learning in which the learner modifies their behavior based on the association of the behavior with a stimulus. Example: operant conditioning is at work when a teacher sets up a system of punishments and reinforcements for classroom behaviors. It involves one's interaction with the environment and the behavior that is maintained by its consequences. On the other hand, classical conditioning deals with the conditioning of reflexive behaviors, which are evoked by antecedent conditions, those that come before the event. Flashcard 24. The zone of proximal development. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Lev Vygotsky. It suggests that students learn best in social contexts in which a more able adult or peer teaches the student something they could not learn on their own. A teacher must determine what a student can do independently and then provide the student with opportunities to learn with the support of an adult or a more capable peer. Flashcard 25. Accommodation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is responding to a new event of object by changing an existing scheme or creating a new scheme. Flashcard 26. Assimilation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is responding to a new event or object that is consistent with an existing scheme. For example, when my refrigerator leaked water for the third time, I called the repair person because I have a repair contract. Flashcard 27. Classical conditioning. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Ivan Pavlov. He conducted classical conditioning experiences with dogs. He found that dogs naturally salivate in an unconditioned response to the unconditioned stimulus of food. He showed that dogs also salivate in response to a conditioned stimulus, and he called that response the salivation, a conditioned response, a process of behavior modification by which a person comes to respond in the desired manner to what was once a neutral stimulus. The neutral stimulus has been repeatedly presented along with an unconditioned stimulus, a natural, inherent stimulus that eventually elicits the desired response. Deals with the conditioning of reflexive behaviors, which are evoked by antecedent conditions, those that come before the event. Flashcard 28. Classical conditioning responses. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is unconditioned response, one that is naturally occurring. Unconditioned stimulus, one that automatically produces an emotional or physiological response. Conditioned stimulus, one that creates an emotional or physiological response after learning. Conditioned response, a learned response to something that was previously neutral. Flashcard 29. Conservation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is knowing that her number or amount stays the same even when rearranged or presented in a different shape. For example, understanding that there has been no change when 6 oz of milk is poured into a short, round glass in which the glass appears half full, and when the same 6 oz of milk is poured into a tall, cylindrical glass that appears only a quarter full. Flashcard 30. Convergent thinking. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a process of gathering several pieces of information together to solve a problem. Flashcard 31. Creativity. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is new and original behavior that creates a culturally appropriate product. Flashcard 32. Declarative, procedural, and conditional knowledge. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is declarative, knowledge of what is. Procedural, knowledge of how to. Conditional, knowledge of when again. Teachers use these types of knowledge to develop lesson plans that explicitly help students know what they are learning. Declarative, how to complete the thinking procedure or to acquire the content. Procedural, and when students can transfer or use this new knowledge in another situation or experience. Conditional. Flashcard 33. Discovery learning. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is teaching methods that enable students to discover information by themselves or in groups. Jerome Buna, Discovery Learning and Scaffolding. John Dewey, Learning Through Experience. Flashcard 34. Disequilibrium. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is one's ability to explain new events based on existing schemes, which is usually accompanied by discomfort. Flashcard 35. Disposition. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a person's natural tendency to approach learning or problem solving in certain ways. A student's disposition is an important factor to consider and the attempt to shape, if needed, so that the student can succeed in complex or challenging learning tasks. Their overall approach and temperament when solving problems, learning, and thinking. Flashcard 36. Distributed cognition. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a process in which 2 or more learners share their thinking as they work together to solve a problem. Flashcard 37. Divergent thinking. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the process of mentally taking a single idea and expanding it in several directions. Flashcard 38. Equilibration. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is movement from equilibrium to disequilibrium and then back to equilibrium again. Flashcard 39. Equilibrium. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is one's ability to explain new events based on existing schemes. Flashcard 40. Long-term memory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the part of memory that holds skills and knowledge for a long time. Flashcard 41. Metacognition. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a person's ability to think about his or her own thinking requires self-awareness and self-regulation of thinking. A student with a high level of metacognition is able to explain their own thinking and describe which strategies they use to read or solve a problem. Flashcard 42. Problem solving. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is to use existing knowledge or skills to solve problems or complex issues. Flashcard 43. Readiness to learn. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a context within which a student's more basic needs like sleep, safety, and love are met, and the student is cognitively ready for developmentally appropriate problem solving and learning. Flashcard 44. Response. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a specific behavior that a person demonstrates. Flashcard 45. Scaffolding. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is instructional support provided to a student by an adult in a learning situation. The more capable a student gets, the less instructional scaffolding they will need. Scaffolding could be a teacher reading the text aloud and then asking the student to repeat. Flashcard 46. Schema. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a concept in the mind about events, scenarios, actions, or objects that have been acquired for past experience. The mind loves organization and must find previous events or experiences with which to associate the information, or the information may not be learned. Flashcard 47. Self-efficacy. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a belief that one is capable. Flashcard 48. Self-regulation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the process of taking control of one's own learning or behavior. Flashcard 49. Stimulus. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a specific object of event that influences positively or negatively a person's learning or behavior. Flashcard 50. Transfer. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the ability to apply a lesson learned in one situation to a new situation. For example, a student who has learned to read the word milk in a book about a cow and then goes home and successfully reads the word milk on the carton. Positive transfer occurs when something is learned at one point that helps learning or performance in another situation. Negative transfer occurs when something learned interferes with the learning or performance in another situation. Flashcard 51. Working memory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the part of memory that holds and actively processes a limited amount of information for a short amount of time. Flashcard 52. Multiple intelligences. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Howard Gardner. Verbal/linguistic learn best by saying, hearing, and seeing words. Logical/mathematical conceptual thinkers compute arithmetic in their heads and reason problems easily. Visual/spatial, think in mental pictures and visual images. Bodily/kinesthetic, athletically gifted and acquire knowledge through bodily sensations. Musical, sensitivity to pitch, sound, melody, rhythm, and tones. Interpersonal, ability to engage and interact with people socially, have a strength in making sense of their world through relationships. Intrapersonal, have the ability to make sense of their own emotional lives as a way to interact with others. Naturalist, ability to observe nature and see patterns. Flashcard 53. 3 levels of culture. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Nitsuri Dalko. Concrete, the most visible and tangible level of culture, includes surface-level aspects like clothes, music, games, and food. Behavioral, defined by our social roles, language, and approaches to nonverbal communication, and helps us situate ourselves organizationally in society. For example, gender roles, family structure, and political affiliation. Symbolic, involves our values and beliefs. Often abstract, but is key to how one defines themselves. Customs, religion. Flashcard 54. Funds of knowledge. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Louis Malle. Researched into the lives of working-class Mexican-American students and their families. This revealed that many families had an abundance of knowledge that the schools did not know about. Says that because of the multicultural family's knowledge, they can become social and intellectual resources for a school. He urges teachers to seek out and use this knowledge to gain a more positive view of the misjudged students and their families. Flashcard 55. Learning style. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a variable that affects how students learn. They are ways that the students tend to approach classroom tasks and cognitive activities. 3 learning styles: auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. Auditory. They process information through listening. They learn through lectures, discussions, listening to tapes, repeating information, and reading aloud. Kinesthetic process info through moving, touching, and doing. Learn through acting out scenes using manipulatives, pacing out measurements, etc. Visual. Process info through seeing. Learn through visual displays, films, illustrated books, graphic organizers, handouts, etc. Flashcard 56. Gender. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a variable that affects how students learn. Plays an important role in students' sense of self, learning, and emotions. Between the ages of 3 and 6, they become aware of their physical gender differences. Males tend to read less for pleasure and are more likely to have difficulty with handwriting, reading, and stuttering. Females tend to have stronger verbal skills, and males tend to have strength in visual spatial reasoning. Females prefer to tell us about something, and males prefer to show us. Males are more prone to engage in an argument in a class discussion than females are. Flashcard 57. Culture. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a variable that affects how students learn. Should consider how students' culture is similar to or different from the culture of the educational setting. Children who are not from the dominant culture may have difficulty adjusting to or understanding the implicit rules that will gain them access and power in mainstream educational settings, which may result in cultural mismatch. Teachers must take the time to understand the family and community values that a child may be bringing to the classroom so that each child can be respected for their cultural ways and not disciplined or devalued for any cultural differences. Flashcard 58. Socioeconomic status. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a variable that affects how students learn. Children from low SES households and communities develop academic skills more slowly than children from higher SES groups do. Flashcard 59. Acculturation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is process of learning and adopting the customs and values of another culture. Flashcard 60. Attention deficit disorder. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is this may be found to impact student learning. Students with AD may have difficulty focusing, following directions, organizing, completing tasks, etc. Flashcard 61. Auditory learner. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is they process information through listening. They learn through lectures, discussions, listening to tapes, repeating information, and reading aloud. Flashcard 62. Autism spectrum disorder. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is may include autism, Asperger's syndrome, and other pervasive developmental delays. Students with these disorders have difficulties socializing and communicating. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism in which the person has normal intelligence and language development but has difficulties with social skills. Flashcard 63. Behavior disorder. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a type of disruptive behavior disorder in children and adolescents where they violate rules, show aggression towards people and animals, destroy property, or practice deceitfulness. Flashcard 64. Cognitive style. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a person's way of perceiving and remembering information, meaning the way someone thinks or solves problems. Flashcard 65. Concrete, operational thinker. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is around the ages 7 to 11, they think in logical terms, not abstract terms. Require hands-on experiences to learn concepts and manipulate symbols logically. Flashcard 66. Formal operational thinkers. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is around the ages 11-15 use hypothetical and abstract thinking. They can use logical operations to work abstract problems. Flashcard 67. Functional mental retardation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a diagnosis for a child who exhibits difficulties with age-specific activities, communicating, daily living activities, and getting along with others. Flashcard 68. Giftedness. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is significantly higher than usual ability in one or more areas. Flashcard 69. Kinesthetic learner. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is process info through moving, touching, and doing. Learn through acting out scenes using manipulatives, pacing out measurements, etc. Flashcard 70. Learning disabilities. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Students with learning disabilities are not learning to their potential. There are three main types: reading, math, and writing. Common characteristics are poor coordination, poor depth perception, short attention span, impulsivity, and difficulty following simple directions. Flashcard 71. Tactile learner. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: process information through touching. Learn through active involvement with the physical world. Flashcard 72. Visual learner. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: process info through seeing. Learn through visual displays, films, illustrated books, graphic organizers, handouts, etc. Flashcard 73. American with Disabilities Act. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a federal law created in 1990 that prohibits discrimination on the basis of a person's disability for all services, programs, and activities provided by state and local government. It is not dependent on federal funds. Flashcard 74. Due process. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a set of procedures that give students with disabilities and their parents extensive rights. Those rights include notice of meetings, opportunities to examine relevant records, impartial hearings, and review procedures. Flashcard 75. Family educational rights and privacy. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: passed in 1974. Gives students and parents access to school records and limits others' access to those records. Flashcard 76. Individuals with Disabilities Act. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: idea passed in 1990. Lists types of disabilities and conditions that render a child entitled to special education. Has resulted in several grant programs and educating students with disabilities. Flashcard 77. Individualized Education Plan IEP. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a written plan for a student with disabilities developed by a team of professionals and the child's parents. It is based on an evaluation by the child's multidisciplinary team and describes how the child is doing presently, what their learning needs are, and what services they will need. They are required under Public Law 94-142. The idea. Flashcard 78. Inclusion. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: strive to educate a child with disabilities in their neighborhood school and in the regular education classroom as much as possible. The goal is to foster a sense of belonging and full acceptance of the learning within the school and classroom. Flashcard 79. Least restrictive environment LRE. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the educational setting that, to maximum extent appropriate, allows students with disabilities to be educated with non-disabled peers. Flashcard 80. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a civil rights law prohibiting discrimination against individuals with disabilities by federal assisted programs or activities. Eligibility for protection under Section 504 is not restricted to school-age children. It covers people from birth to death. Flashcard 81. Equal access. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: students have legal rights to equal access to a quality education. Flashcard 82. First Amendment rights. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: include respecting the establishment of religion, free exercise of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble, and the right to make a complaint to the government without fear of reprisals. Flashcard 83. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: FERPA 1974. Guarantees that parents can access their children's records and also prohibits release of school records without parental permission or student permission once the student is 18. Flashcard 84. Lau versus Nichols. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1974. Federally funded schools must provide their non-English speaking students with either English instruction or instruction in their native language. Flashcard 85. The Education of All Handicapped Children Act. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1975. Created to ensure a free and appropriate education is provided to handicapped children and adults ages 3-21. LRE originated with this law. Flashcard 86. Land Ordinance of 1795. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: helped establish a way to fund public education. Flashcard 87. Plessy versus Ferguson. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1896. Ruled that separate but equal facilities were allowed by law. Was overturned in Brown versus Board of Ed. Flashcard 88. Brown versus Board of Education. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1954. Ruled that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. It effectively denied the legal basis for segregation in Kansas and 20 other states. It was an important first step towards providing equal rights for all children. Flashcard 89. Pierce versus Society of Sisters. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is also called Oregon School Case of 1925. The Oregon school system decided to Americanize schools by requiring all children ages 8-16 to attend public schools. The Society of Sisters of the Holy Name of Jesus and Mary disputed the constitutionality of this state law. The court ruled that the state of Oregon could not require all students to attend public schools b/c. It violates the 14th Amendment of personal liberty. Students can be required to attend public or private schools. Flashcard 90. Sputnik. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: U.S. education dramatically changed after October 4th, 1957, when the Soviet Union successfully launched the world's first satellite. The Sputnik launch led to the creation of NASA as well as American outcry for advanced coursework in math and science in U.S. schools. Flashcard 91. No Child Left Behind. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 2001. Education reform efforts spearheaded by President Bush. Reauthorized ESSEA Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Based on 4 principles: accountability for results, more choices for parents, greater local control and flexibility, and an emphasis on doing what works based on scientific research. Flashcard 92. A Nation at Risk. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a report written by the National Commission of Excellence in Education that said and provided evidence that American education, especially in secondary schools, was falling behind that of other countries. Flashcard 93. Essay. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. A federal program enacted to respond to the inequality in schools for the educationally disadvantaged, was related to President Johnson's War of Poverty. Flashcard 94. Accommodations. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is these are adjustments to the student's task, learning environment or supports provided without changing academic achievement expectations. Flashcard 95. Modifications. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is these are changes to curriculum expectations because the curriculum is beyond the student's level of ability. Flashcard 96. Differentiated instruction. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is involves a flexible approach to teaching in which a teacher plans and implements varied approaches to teaching content, process, and product in an effort to respond to student differences in reading, interests, and learning needs. Flashcard 97. Advanced Organizer. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by David Ausable. The Advanced Organizer is introduced before learning begins and is designed to help students link their prior knowledge to the current lesson's content. Flashcard 98. Modeling Theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Albert Bandura. Observational learning, or modeling, requires several steps. Attention, attending to the lesson. Retention, remembering what was learned. Reproduction, trying out the skill or concept. Motivation, willingness to learn and ability to self-regulate behavior. Flashcard 99. Assertive discipline. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Lee Cantor. Teachers clearly communicate expectations and class rules and follow through with expectations. They have a choice to follow the rules or face the consequences. Flashcard 100. Choice theory. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by William Glasser. Teachers focus on student behavior, not students, when resolving classroom conflicts. They use class meetings to change behavior in the classroom. Students who had a say in the rules, curriculum, and environment of the classroom have greater ownership of their learning. This approach emphasizes creating a safe space to learn, and is designed to promote intrinsic motivation to learn and to behave in the classroom. Flashcard 101. Witness. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is created by Jacob Kernan. Witness equals awareness of what is happening in their classroom. Teachers must have this in order to manage their classroom well. They also must pace their lessons appropriately and create smooth transitions between activities. Flashcard 102. Attribution. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is when one constructs a casual explanation for failure of success. Flashcard 102. Cognitive dissonance. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a feeling of mental discomfort in which new information conflicts with beliefs or previously learned information. Flashcard logic 4. Extrinsic motivation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is motivation that comes from external sources or from outside a person. Behavior charts and incentives for learning are examples of this. Flashcard logic 5. Facilitating anxiety versus debilitating anxiety. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is facilitating equals low levels of anxiety. They can enhance student learning and performance. When a teacher assigns a section of reading for HW and mentions that there might be a pop quiz on it the next day, students may be more apt to complete the reading based on the potential discomfort of taking the quiz. Debilitating equals high level. Detracts from a student's ability to concentrate on the task or even attempt to do it out of fear. Flashcard 106. Intrinsic motivation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is motivation that comes from within, providing students time to reflect on goals and achievements or helping students see what they have learned and how it is important are examples of this. Flashcard 107. Learned helplessness. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a tendency for a person to be a passive learner who is dependent on others for guidance and decision-making. Flashcard audit. Punishment. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the goal is to weaken or extinguish bad behavior. Flashcard audit 9. Reinforcement. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the process or action of strengthening or reinforcing a behavior. Flashcard item 10. Self-determination. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is suggests that humans have a basic need to autonomy when it comes to the courses their lives take. Flashcard 111. Library media specialists. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is experts in locating print and non-print resources. Professionals with advanced degrees who provide individual and group instruction or assistance to students and teachers seeking more information on a topic. Flashcard 112. Paraprofessional. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is educational support professional who typically assist individual and group instruction or assistance to students or the classroom teacher. Flashcard audio. Ability test. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is standardized tests used to evaluate an individual's performance in a specific area. Flashcard audio 14. Achievement tests. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is written for a variety of subjects and levels designed to measure a student's knowledge in something that has been learned or taught. XSAT. Flashcard audio 15. Analytical rubrics. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is designed to provide specific information about each aspect of a task in order to share specific strengths and weaknesses of a student. Flashcard audio 16. Aptitude tests. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is standardized or reference tests that are designed to measure a student's ability to develop or acquire skills and knowledge. Flashcard 117. Authentic assessments. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is measure student understanding of the learning process and product rather than just the product. Students develop the responses rather than select from predetermined options. Flashcard 18. Criterion reference tests. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: determine how well a student performs on an explicit objective relative to a predetermined performance level, such as grade level expectations or mastery. They do not help teachers compare student results to those of other test takers. X. An exam at the end of a social studies text chapter made by the teacher of the publisher. Flashcard 19. Diagnostic evaluations. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is usually standardized or norm-referenced and are given before instruction begins to help a teacher understand students' learning needs. They help teachers learn about students' areas of difficulties. Flashcard 20. Formative evaluations. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: provide info about learning in progress and offer the teacher and the students an opportunity to monitor and regulate learning. Flashcard 121. Norm-referenced tests. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: ACA standardized tests. They are used to determine a student's performance in relation to the performance of a group of peers who are taking the same test. Most often used by school personnel to make decisions about curriculum and school performance levels. Flashcard 122. Performance assessments. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: require a student to perform a task or generate their own response during the assessment. X. A student has to write an essay rather than answer multiple-choice questions. Flashcard 20. Standards-based assessments. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: measure student progress toward meeting goals based on local, state, or national goals. They can be based on content or performance standards and can be criterion or norm referenced. Flashcard 124. Summative evaluations. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: provide info about learning to be used to make judgments about a student's achievements and the teacher's instruction. Flashcard 125. Analytic scoring. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: typically used to assess constructed response test questions and includes detailed descriptions of the criteria. Flashcard 126. Holistic scoring. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: typically used to assess constructed response test questions. It uses general descriptions of the criteria for success on each question. Flashcard 127. Mean, median, and mode. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: mean, the average of a set of scores. Median, the midpoint of a set of scores. Mode, the most common number in a set of scores. Flashcard 128. Reliability. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: this is the extent to which an assessment is consistent with its measures. Flashcard 129. Scaled scores. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: based on a mathematical transformation of a raw score. They can be helpful when determining averages and to study change over time. Flashcard quartiles. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: when you divide a normal distribution of scores into 4 equal parts, You can describe student data as it falls into one of the three quartiles. Q1, the bottom 25%. Q2, the middle 50%, the median. Q3, the highest 25% or the lowest 75%. Flashcard Audit 31. Percentile rank. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: they show the percentage of students in a group whose scores fall above or below the given student's scores. The score range is between 1 and 99. If a student scored in the 50th percentile, 50% of the scores in the norm group fell below on the same test. Flashcard 2. Standard deviation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a measure of variability that indicates the typical distance between a set of scores of a distribution and the mean or reverse score. Flashcard validity. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a test is found to be valid if it measures what it was designed to measure. Flashcard response to intervention. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an assessment-driven, student-centered process that schools use to help students who are struggling academically or behaviorally. It aims to close achievement gaps for students. Tier 1 screening assessments are given to determine which students are at risk for learning difficulties. For students at risk, the classroom teacher designs and monitors an intervention and then assesses the student again to see if it worked. If it did not work, the student moves to Tier 2. Tier 2 targeted intervention is provided and monitored closely over intervals of time. It is usually taught in collaboration with the classroom teacher and a specialist. If it is successful, they use the data to inform future instructional programming for the child and monitor the student's progress. If not, they move on to Tier 3. Tier 3 continues using data to inform student instruction and intervention planning, but adds additional intensive and individual support. If they are not successful in Tier 3, the student is likely to be referred for a full or individual evaluation as required by IDEA. Flashcard 35. Performance standards. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: set the level of performance expectation for student groups. They are generally set at the state and local levels. Flashcard content standards. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: provide expectations for the knowledge students must demonstrate. Flashcard 37. Writing objectives. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: must set clear expectations for a lesson and unit of student and ensure that the lesson objectives link to the assessments planned. Have 3 parts: measurable verb, criteria, and conditions. Flashcard partner check or think/pair/share. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: individual students complete work and then pair with an assigned student to check work and discuss content. Flashcard 9. Small group investigation. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: students are assigned a topic and prepare a report or summary to share with the whole class. Flashcard whole group instruction. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: students work as a class to read, discuss, or solve a problem. Desirable when teacher modeling or direct instruction is necessary. Flashcard 41. Independent study sessions or units. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: students are given a chance to work at their own pace under the teacher's leadership. They can be beneficial for students who need course material modified to be more challenging or simplified. Flashcard Audio 42. Understanding by design. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is by J. McTighe and Grant Wiggins. It uses the principles of backwards design to design a unit of instruction based on what students need to know and be able to do, how to assess student learning, and how to plan a series of lessons. Interdisciplinary unit instruction. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: incorporates information from two or more content areas to help students see the connections and real-life links across disciplines. Flashcard Object 44. Thematic unit instruction. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a way to organize curriculum around large themes. They are integrated across several content areas. Flashcard Object 45. Madeline Hunter's effective teaching model. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: emphasizes the following parts of an effective lesson: objective standards of performance, anticipatory set or advanced organizer teaching, guided practice and monitoring, lesson closure and practice. Flashcard Object 46. Curriculum frameworks. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: list broad goals of a school, district, state, or school and provide subject-specific outlines of course content, standards, and performance expectations. Flashcard Object 47. Emergency curriculum. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: based primarily on the interests of children. The teacher works together with family and other community members to set possible direction for a project and then determine the actual curriculum based on student interest. Flashcard Audio Point. Tiered instruction. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the teacher offers the same core content to each student but provides varying levels of support for students. Flashcard Audio 49. Curriculum compacting. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the teacher finds key content that must be learned and reduces the number of examples, activities, or lessons so that a student can demonstrate the content and move on to another level. Flashcard Audio. Curriculum chunking. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the teacher breaks down a unit's content into smaller units or chunks and provides support and frequent feedback to the student as they demonstrate understanding of each chunk. Flashcard Audio 51. Flexible grouping. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: groups that change as the student's learning needs change. Students who need to better understand how to make inferences work together until they are proficient, and then the group disbands. Flashcard Audio 52. Jigsaw. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: instructional materials are divided and then studied by individuals or pairs of students. After students become experts on their section, they share the information with the group. Flashcard 50. Reciprocal teaching. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the teacher and the student engage in a discussion of the text. Both the student and the teacher question and respond to the text in an effort to improve the student's comprehension of the material. Flashcard Audio 54. Student teams achievement divisions step. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: students are assigned to heterogeneously grouped teams of 4 or 5 members who collaborate on worksheets designed to provide extended practice on instruction given by the teacher. Flashcard Article 55. Heterogeneous grouping. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: mixed ability groups. Flashcard Article 56. Homogeneous grouping. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: similar ability groups. Flashcard Article 57. Efferent stance. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: when students discuss the text with an efferent stance, they make sense of the content, the meaning of the text, or the factual points of the text. Flashcard Article B. Aesthetic stance. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: when students discuss the text with an aesthetic stance, they connect personal experiences to the text, discussing thoughts and feelings about the text. Flashcard Article 59. Conflict resolution techniques. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: help students who have had a conflict to work together to arrive at a mutually beneficial solution. The goal is to resolve the conflict peacefully and cooperatively. Flashcard Article 60. Behavior modification techniques. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: identify the problem behavior, plan a method for changing the behavior, offer positive reinforcement when the student's behavior is positive, use positive reinforcement consistently to shape and change the problem behavior. Flashcard Article 61. Harvard College. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: established in 1636. The initial mission of the college was to ensure that the leaders of the church, state government, and judicial system were well prepared and learned. Flashcard 162. Benjamin Franklin. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: he advanced formal education in America by establishing a plan for the English language grammar school in Philadelphia. Flashcard 163. Yale Report to 1820. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the report demonstrated the strength of a conservative view of education, the need for a classical curriculum which was centered at Yale. Flashcard 164. Compulsory education. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the Massachusetts Compulsory Education Act of 1852 required compulsory school attendance for children between the ages of 8 and 14 for at least 3 months of the year. Flashcard Article 65. Moral Act 1862. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: established institutions in each state to provide an education in agriculture, home econ, mechanical arts, and other practical professions. The goal was to assure that education would be available to people in all social classes. Flashcard 166. Manual training movement. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: provided the foundation for the vocational education programs in schools today. It offered wood and metal working, and it was seen as an enhancement to the traditional high school curriculum.